So it's actually pretty weird that the finest guy on YouTube is making a video about foods that can basically last you 20 years on in your pantry. I can't even say that word, okay? But in your closet where you put the food stuff, okay? And the canned goods and all that good stuff, you know? And one thing I realized, guys, that, you know, when it comes to financial freedom, when it comes to, for example, inflation, economic turmoil, and all those crazy things, I realized in the past 4 years when we had a pandemic and we had lines that were like miles long to get food and get access to things we actually needed. Like, can you imagine if we had like this crazy emergency? And we usually do, we have these things every now and then, right? And whenever you have an emergency, what do? We try to go to the grocery store, we try to buy a bunch of stuff as fast as possible, but sometimes it's kind of hard to prepare when everyone out there is trying to prepare also. And you know, we haven't seen this yet, at least in my lifetime, potentially. I haven't seen it yet when the government doesn't get involved and says, for example, hey, you're not allowed to raise prices, but I have heard about those things that happened in the past, okay? Whenever there is a ton of demand for not enough supply, prices can basically rise a bunch. And I've never seen a situation where people say like, I want to trade goods, I don't want to trade, for example, money because money becomes worthless. Maybe I've been seeing like too much of those survival shows or whatever, but in this video, what I really want to give you guys is kind of like some tools and some ideas when it comes to foods that can last you a very long time in your pantry to basically store there in case something does happen in the future. Now, obviously, this will help you in a few ways. First, it'll save you money because if you prepare today, when the time does come, you don't have to rebuy these things at an expensive price. For example, in Puerto Rico, when the pandemic hit, there were crazy lines. And on top of that, people had to pay extra money to get certain items, right? But surprisingly, after I did all the research for this video, I realized that there are so many foods out there that can last you literally years. And when I say years, I don't mean 1, 2 years, I mean decades. Some 20 years, some 30 years, and some, if you store them correctly, indefinitely, okay? So that's pretty cool. And as you watch this video, I'll give you some more tools towards the end of the video, so make sure you stick around all the way to the end. And by the way, use this video, the comment section, to share a bunch of ideas on things you can basically buy for storage. But I realize that the older I get, the more boring I get. Like, I would never find things like this interesting, but now all of a sudden, when it comes to like having things for survival, it kind of just seems interesting to me. Like, money is great, right? Well, we want money, but having things that, you know, you have there, they're necessities, doesn't make sense to have a lot of money if you're basically starving to death. But yeah, those things are very important. So as always, guys, like this video on top about also subscribe and hit the bell to get notified. Now, I have the list right here on my phone, and the very first thing, guys, is going to be white rice, not the brown kind. And no, there's no discrimination here because I'm brown, obviously. But the idea is, I didn't know why white rice, like jasmine rice, for example, over the brown rice. But it turns out that the brown rice has more oil content, which makes it susceptible to basically spoilage and not lasting that long. But however, when it comes to white rice, you know, I've had white rice before that I left there for a long time. And after a while, they get like these little bugs and they kind of just like go bad or whatever. But if you actually store it in an airtight container, it can actually last you between 20 to 30 years. Yeah, 20 to 30 years. That's a very long time. So having, for example, a few pounds of rice there in case something happens, the answer is 20 to 30 years is a very long time, and you never really have to think about it. And yes, it preserves, for example, the taste and also all the nutritional ingredients. So that's pretty cool stuff, okay? Not nutritional ingredients, that sounds weird, but more of like the nutritional qualities of it. Is it qualities or functions? I couldn't tell you. But the point is, it retains its nutrition and it also retains its flavor over 20 to 30 years, and that is impressive if you keep it stored well in an airtight container. And by the way, talking about airtight containers, I'm gonna link down below some that you can actually get on Amazon for like 25 bucks. They're on sale, half off. And on top of that, consider this. Well, I'll tell you more about that later on, but again, link is down below, and it is an affiliate link, so when you buy, I do get paid, but it's a small fraction, and it does not change the price for you. Now, number 2 is gonna be the standards, okay, and that is sugar and salt. You can also put honey in here, and by the way, I did not know this, but honey is like 17% water content, so whenever it does start, for example, to go a long time, it just kind of crystallizes, but it doesn't go bad, and whenever you wanna reuse it, you kind of just gotta like boil it over like some hot water, not like you put the honey in that's stupid, don't do that. But you put it like in a jar and you kind of like just like heat it up with like water, and it starts to kind of loosen up and you're able to use it. Also, same thing with salts and also like with sugar. It will last you a long time. The key here is, for example, just keep things in an airtight container in a cool place, and that's the key here, okay? And by the way, if you also know this, you probably do, right? Like back in the days when there were no refrigerators, they used to use salt as a preservative. So they would have, for example, meats or whatever, and they would wrap it around in salt and like bury it in the sand, and it would basically last a very long time because, again, salt is very dry. There's no water content in there, so it's very susceptible, not susceptible, but like anti-susceptible. Is that a word? It just kind of like doesn't help spoilage and bacteria to actually get inside there. That's the whole point, okay? Now, and by the way, the shelf life on this stuff is indefinite. So you will probably pass away first before that thing goes bad. Now, number 3, which is my favorite, is actually dried beans. Again, there is so much nutrition in there. There is just so many good things about beans. And by the way, the flavor is just amazing. But there was actually a study that was actually done with about like 56 people, and they fed these people like beans that were like 20 to like 30 years old, and all the folks said, well, around 80% of them said, hey, I wouldn't mind eating this like during an emergency. Like, it's not that bad, okay? It's actually pretty good in reality, okay? So yeah, you can actually keep beans in an airtight container. Again, store them there. When I say beans, I mean, for example, like lentils. I mean, for example, black beans, white beans, brown beans, you know, all the bean stuff, okay? You can basically keep it airtight container, and it will last you between a very long time, 20, 30 years. Now, will it be the same taste? Obviously, if some folks said I would eat it during an emergency, probably not, but at least it's going to be solid. And do I mean, for example, the canned beans? The answer is, in this video, I'm talking about the dried beans. I don't know exactly how long the canned beans with the liquid and the metal that can rust is actually going to last. But I know the dried beans are going to last between 20, potentially even 32 years, okay? Now, number 4 is actually powdered milk. I don't like milk, but powdered milk, if they can actually make like powdered almond milk. And by the way, my grandma had no idea almond milk was actually a thing until I told her. She was like, almond milk is a thing? And they also have cashew milk? That's crazy. These people are crazy, okay? Advances in technology, grandma, are doing amazing things, okay? Yeah, but powdered milk can actually last you between 2 to 10 years, depending on how exactly you store it, okay? So the big thing is you don't want to leave it in its bag and assume that, well, it's in the bag, so it'll be good. No, you want to get special containers like the ones down below, and you want to use them to basically help you store these foods and last you as long as possible. Now, I did make a mistake, which is I used to use some of those containers, put them in the fridge, try to freeze them, take them out, and then I started to notice started cracking on the edges. So just make sure when you're doing this stuff, you're not like freezing those containers, because sometimes the plastic can kind of crack with the coldness, okay? Just suggestion, so keep that in mind. Number 5 is going to be popcorn. Popcorn, by far my favorite, and if you store the popcorn correctly, not the bag ones, because the bag ones, again, you have butter in there, you have salt, you have certain chemicals, those things eventually age and they go bad. I mean the actual kernels. If you store those correctly, they can last you basically indefinitely, okay? And whenever you want to use them, by the way, guys, did you guys know this, that you can actually make popcorn without oil? Like, that's a real thing, okay? So you watch a video on YouTube, how to make popcorn without oil. It's a real thing. I don't want to go into detail here in this video because we have more to cover, okay? But yeah, it's a real thing. Now, number 6 is going to be powdered cheese. Now, everyone loves cheese, and by the way, I'm actually disappointed that it only lasts between like 3 to 5 years here, but it's not that bad, 3 to 5 years. And here's what I want to tell you guys, okay? I noticed that a lot of things, you know, they might have this timeline of like 3 to 5 years, then they go bad. And you might say, well, is it worth it to store those things up? The answer is, yeah, you can still store those things up. And then what you do is, right, as they approach their life-ending cycle, you kind of just use them and then you restock, even if you don't have an emergency, for example. So if the beans are going to go bad next year, then I just basically eat them this year, rebuy, and then I have another 20, 30 years to actually use them again, okay? And by the way, let me know in the comments down below, should I make a video on things you can actually buy, like things like toothpaste and so on, and toilet paper you can actually buy and store, things that are not consumables in a sense, okay? Comment down below, let me know. Now, one big thing, guys, I kept wondering about was, yo, where's the protein on these lists? Okay, I kept looking through lists. I was like, yo, where's the protein? Like, where's the actual meat? Like, do they make meat that can actually last? And obviously, meat is a very complicated thing. Canned meat is complicated. Dry meat is complicated because they don't usually last that long. And that's why a lot of these things, they're going to have to be, for example, recyclable, where you kind of like use them as they end their term and you kind of just like restack on them. And by the way, I will say this about cheese. I did not know this, although it should kind of just be assumed. But cheese, even if you buy, for example, the normal cheese and you try to store it up with the actual, like, what is it called? Like the candle thing around it. I don't know what it's called. It's like the wax, the cheese wax. Like it lasts a long time. But even if cheese gets like, what's that thing? Like the fungus thing or the mold, you can just like take that off and eat the cheese. Like that's it. Like you will not get sick. Okay, that's if you take it off correctly. I'm not your doctor. Just forget what I said. Okay. But what I learned from the internet, not from TommyBryson, is that you can just take off the mold and you're able to eat it no problem. So keep that in mind. You'll have some stinky cheese, but at least it'll be some cheese. All right. But as far as protein, I thought about, for example, like what do the astronauts eat when you go camping, or the military guys? A lot of these folks, all that food is like fast and it's kind of like good in a sense. It's not really like for long stories. So a lot of those just last like 2 years or whatever. I thought they would last like years and decades, but not really. Like not at least the ones I looked up. Now, as far as, for example, meats, I found Spam, which has like no expiration date, but it does have a best buy, which is usually like around 3 years or so, which is actually pretty good. But I don't know what 5 years or 10 year Spam looks like. And I'm always worried because, you know, you have, for example, moisture in the can. You also have a can, which is metal, which rusts. So all these factors are important to consider. And I don't really know how you would store it completely. So comment down below and let me know how you would store it. Probably if you froze it. But then if we have a power, I'm watching too many survival shows, honestly. But yeah. Spam, 3 years. Then you have, for example, jerky, 2 years. I thought jerky would be a lot longer than Spam because it's already dried, but no. I do know, for example, if jerky is left in a bad environment, it actually starts to get mold around it. So that does make sense. It actually goes bad. Tuna canned goes about 3 to 5 years. Canned meats goes about 2 to 5 years also. Now here are some other things to actually consider. You have like pasta, which is about 2 years. Canola oil, which is about 2 years, and tomato sauce, which is about 2 years also. Now the overall advice is, guys, keep in mind the containers which you actually use to contain this food or whatever, or store it, is the most important factor. So if you invest into some like fancy containers that basically close, they basically seal it tight, or you buy one of those machines that kind of like suck up all, by the way, sorry about the light, let's just turn it off because there's no charge. But if you suck up all the air out, probably lasts a lot longer. But again, those are bigger investments. That's why the canned stuff is like 25 bucks, not a big deal, not that expensive relative to like other stuff. And you can basically just like store things a lot longer. And then you have, for example, I thought about this too, which is basically water filters, because if you think about it, what if the water is not that good, right? So you want to have water filters also, so that way if things don't go that great, then you have like, why am I making this video? I just realized, like, why am I making a video on a finance channel about storage and budget friendly stuff? It doesn't really make sense, but I feel like in some way it has to overlap in some way, guys. So that's why I'm making this video, because I feel like, okay, so once you achieve financial freedom, what do you want aside from an emergency fund? You want to make sure you have things around the house in case something goes wrong, that you actually have food and water, right? Because it makes no sense to have money and you can't buy anything with it, because at the end of the day, money is just an agreement between you and me to say this thing has value. But if you're starving and I offer you $10 for your food and you can't buy anything with it, you're not gonna sell it to me, right? So I think that's the reason this video, I feel like I gotta make it, okay? Now, third, recycle. So as you're approaching, for example, things you want to buy, let's say, for example, like that don't last so long, like the cheese or the canned goods or whatever, it's okay to buy these things, and then like as they approach the final end of their life, you kind of like eat it and you rebuy, so things don't go to waste in a sense. That's the overall idea. So don't think, well, I can't store food or meats or whatever because it's like 5 years and then I have to rebuy every 5 years. No, just use it every 4 years, and that way you can just rebuy and just store those things there. That way during bad times like hurricanes and earthquakes or pandemics or whatever else comes in the future, you have food there. It's not like you're gonna have a bunker with a bed and you're protected from atomic bombs and you have, for example, a whole like supermarket in your house, okay? But it's just like have some stuff in there that lasts for like 7 days, maybe 14, maybe 30 days if you're crazy, a year. For me personally, I'll probably do like for like maybe like 14 days or like 30 days, something like that potentially. And I have not bought anything. Like I just did this video today because I wanted to do research on this stuff, because something just told me like maybe I should do some research on this stuff, and that's why I did some research on this stuff, okay guys? But that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. Comment down below more ideas, more things you can buy, more storage ideas also. And as always guys, like this video on top out. Also, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified. Up here is another video. Over here's my face, subscribe. As always, welcome back to the survival channel, I guess, financial survival channel, okay? Peace out guys.